Hello, everybody. As Philip already said, my name is Klaus. I'm Austrian. In December, I always sign my emails with Santa Claus. But it's far away still. So, with the words of prayer, I would want to start. Lord, thank you for putting me in this spot here and giving me the opportunity to talk about your greatness and your glory. Amen. So, I'd start with a topic that is really on my heart, because it was a presentation of a friend of mine in, must be 77, 76, something like this, when he talked about creation and science and explained to me that it's not a myth. And I want to pass this on. The topic was instrumental for me to turn to Christ again. Normally, fairy tales start with the words, once upon a time. How does the Bible start? In the beginning. Old Testament, in the New Testament, Gospel of John, in the beginning. Some people don't realize that the Gospel of John reaches back so far. How far is that? We'll see. Secular science tells us otherwise, that time did not start with God. What is true? What do we believe? The aim of today's sermon is to help us to see the greatness of God and to see that creation makes sense and is not in contradiction to science. I hope I'm competent enough that you believe me what I'm saying, because I'm a physicist. However, we do not understand everything in the material world. We have the data in front of our eyes. It's just a question how to interpret the data. And how to interpret it depends on your worldview. We see God's handiwork when we look out the window, see nature. That's God's general revelation. Your point of view in solving this problem or looking at this topic is, your point of view depends on where you stand. This also is part of Murphy's laws. We cannot find detailed answer in the Bible for scientific problems, because the Bible is not a textbook for science. We have, Genesis 1 is a straightforward description of the creation process. God is the cause. He made it happen. In physics, we work with the principle cause and effect. We see the effect all around us. For more information about God, we have to turn to other places or sources. The following situation is found in the cosmological argument for God. It goes like this. Premise 1, everything that began to exist has a cause. The universe once began to exist, conclusion, so the universe has a cause. The problem is just from the philosophical point of view, you have to prove or assume premise 1 and premise 2 to be true to make the conclusion. If you don't believe in one of the premises, the whole train of thoughts is null and void. Everyone sees God's works. For centuries, the church held the position that God was the one who called the universe into being. Nothing is said about what existed before God started his creation. God said, and it came into being. It's called a creatio ex nihilo, from Latin, a creation out of nothing, because God said, and it was there. This is how each day of creation starts. The Hebrew word for the creation act for the verb is bara, and it's used 3 times in 1:1, heavens and earth, 1:21, sea creatures and birds and man. Every time it's used, it signals a new quality of creation. Other places where it is the word originally is translated created, it's actually formed. Yeah? There's a little slight difference. So, yeah, so we had that. Can you please? Can you please do it for me? No. This is the end. Very nice, yeah. We have, yeah. Next one, please. How far do I have to go back to reach it? So God started, and now this is very interesting, the physicist is speaking. God started time, that's in the beginning. He stretched out space, that's length, and he filled the space with matter. That's mass. This is the basis for measurements in any area of physics. Any other quantities of physics can be combined from those three units. God is the force that made it happen. Next, please. The earth was formless and void. Tohu wabohu is the Hebrew word, often understood as chaotic, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. The expression tohu wabohu is often understood as a chaotic situation. A closer look reveals that the steps of creation are logical and systematic and happened in the right order. Each step depends on the existence of the previous one. We see 3 divisions in days 1 to 3 and 3 fillings in days 4 to 6. Next, please. The 3 divisions are light and darkness, the waters and waters, waters below, the waters above, and in the middle is the expanse. Then land with vegetation and the seas. The filling, the 4th day, first we fill the expanse with celestial bodies, waters filled with swarms of living creatures, and the expanse filled with winged birds. Day 6, living creatures appear on land, and male and female are made. And then, seventh day. The creation act ends actually with Genesis 2:3. Because God allowed himself a day of rest, his work was done. He called his creation very good. Verse 26. If we assume that the word day in Hebrew yom is a 24-hour period, then we only can marvel about the complexity and the greatness of God. I remember I took this presentation that converted me to Christ again and presented it in various churches in Austria. And once I was at a Catholic church, Bible study in the evening, and when I mentioned Yom means 24 hours, the Catholic priest sitting in the first row, half loud, do you really believe that? But that happens. Often people wonder what Genesis, the next chapter, 2:4 to 2:25, is good for. This section reveals some details about the creation of man and woman, and we get a glimpse into the environment man was put into, the paradise. Now we switch to the New Testament. It starts with, in the beginning was the Word. If we continue, John 1 to 18 is called the prologue. For me, it's so peaceful, so nice that I'm learned it by heart, but my memory with age is defading, so I can't reproduce it all. But I love it so much. For us, the verses 1 through 5 are relevant for us today because we focus on creation. if we continue reading, we do not find a list of stages of God's work of creation, but we rather find the confirmation that an idea was behind it all. We can conclude this from the Greek word logos. Greek word logos in John 1:1. It is a term used in Western philosophy, psychology, rhetoric, and as well as religion. It's found in the names of sciences like pathology, biology, geology, theology, and so on. It has a plethora of meanings. According to Wikipedia, you can find out where it comes from, namely from a Proto-Indo-European root, leg. I don't know what the accent on top of the G means in pronunciation, but let's say it's called leg, which can have the meanings put in order, arrange, gather, choose, count, reckon, discern, say, speak. A lot. From this description, I conclude that logos carries the meaning of systematic thinking, science, order, systematic arrangements. Because every word carries a meaning. We'll see this in a minute, how this works. This includes natural laws of physics on the basis of which the universe functions. Information is essential for life in general because the words, the letters, carry information, what is meant. So, let's assume, next slide, three-lettered E, S, and T. We can arrange these in 6 ways, and only one carries a meaning because man or whoever says this combination of words means that. The information comes from outside, and the other 5 combinations are redundant. Well, they're superfluous. So, next please. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. These 2 verses build a small chiasm. Those who know me, I'm a fan of chiasms. It's a structure in Scripture where verses are put in such a form that there is a message is always in the middle. And if you find the right brackets, top and bottom, you can peel them like onions, and in the middle is the message. And you can't go wrong in the interpretation what the message is. So, in one verse, one bracket is, in the beginning was the Word. At the end, he was in the beginning with the Word. 1b, 2, and the Word was with God, and 2 prime, and the Word was God. That means the Word was God is the message. Good. We have to now understand what is meant with the word word. And we find this out if you look at the prologue, verse 14, where it says, Logos, he was the Word, and the Word became flesh. We know Jesus became flesh, so Jesus is the Logos, is the Word. Replacing the word in the chiasm with Jesus, we come up, next slide. In the beginning was Jesus, and Jesus was with God, and Jesus was God. He was in the beginning with God. With one word, the deity of Jesus is confirmed, just in the start of the gospel. The next verse of the prologue, there's an indication that blocks any other interpretation that the universe came into existence other than by the word of God. Do we have the next one already? Yeah. All things came into being through him, and apart from him, nothing came into being that came into being. If you read this without knowing that this is a chiasm, you wonder why all the repetitions. The repetitions are there to lead you to the message. And the message is that some people may argue that only a part of the universe was created by God. On the contrary, all things, as it says here, were created, and God was the only creator, and there was nothing that came into being by another process. So, by chance or something by itself, nothing came into being. Everything was made. When you start a project, you must have a plan. That's good, yeah? An architect needs a plan, yeah? I remember once there was a colleague who was a little bit chaotic, and he built a house. And a friend came to look at the house and said, well, if you build that wall further, you run right into the door. Oh, interesting, he said. Yeah? So he didn't have a plan. We find out in the critical point is therefore, this is the next step of thinking, is we have unanimated matter, yeah, chairs and so on, and we need animated matter that lives. And how it turned into living. We find this in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. Then the Lord, next slide, formed man out of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. Unanimated matter required the breath of God to become animated. This transition and changes of matter without God's breath of life is not possible from biblical perspective. In Genesis 1, we have seen God as the cause, the engineer, the driving force behind this. However, people who exclude God from the equation see that the transition from non-life to life happened by chance, by itself. And they say it must have happened because we see the result. But there's a key point. In principle, it's thinkable, but it's not realized. Yeah? So there's a lot of, when you are in the discussion about creation, there's a point when someone makes a statement, this has to be so happen in such a way, you ask, what makes you think that way? Are there arguments? Are there data that support your thinking? But very often it's just in their mind. But people who think that everything came into being by itself, they say, okay, and you say, no, that's not happening. We don't see it. We say, well, wait long enough, yeah? Because the impossible becomes improbable. The improbable becomes probable. The probable becomes uncertain, and the uncertain thing becomes certain. Just wait long enough. Skeptics never die out. They do not see God's hand in creation. With him being the light, all creation is clearly visible, but the skeptics do not see him. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. You see God's creation, and people say, no, I don't see God working, or God's work. It happens. In the following, I want to shed some light about how skeptics think. They think everything happened with a Big Bang. The Big Bang is energy that exploded. The question is, where did it come from? Yeah, when everything by itself, where does the energy come from? Is there proof? No. With everything that's in the past without creation and so on, there is no real proof. The problem is we cannot have experiments and repeat creation. The system is too big. There are forces necessary that we don't have and cannot emulate. But they say, okay, there is, let's see if we can, no, doesn't work. In the beginning you have, back please, you have the explosion. Then energy spreads out, cools off. From energy you get matter with Einstein's equation, and from that you have elementary particles, you have atoms, you have molecules, they form, and then you wait, and then they coalesce. if you want stars to form, like when it's kind of condensation, you need condensation nuclei. Were the condensation nuclei? Good question. I don't know. They don't know. Yeah. And then the complexity increases, yeah, from these molecules. They organize themselves. Where did the information come from how to organize themselves? People say it's in the matter itself. Matter knows how to organize itself. How did it get there? But matter needs information. I remember one thing. Then, but you could already skip. Yeah, I get the next one. Yeah. When I was writing my doctoral thesis, we had in '77, there was Ilya Prigogine, a Russian-Belgian scientist who won in '77 the Nobel Prize for Chemistry. And he came to University of Technology for a presentation. His topic was self-organization and, I just had it. Unstationary thermodynamics, yeah? irreversible thermodynamics, one of the most difficult topics that exist. I never dug into it. But he was talking about existence of life, how life came into being, and after he left, I asked my professor if in our seminar I could present the Christian version of the creation of life, and he was so generous. Can you imagine? He allowed me to speak. And at the end, a colleague of mine said, I cannot imagine how this stone became a brain. And the professor couldn't say anything, sorry. By the way, this is a stone I picked up as a special one that I love so much. It sounds like nothing, but it's like an egg. It's from East Tyrol. It's a serpentine, and the surface is smooth like velvet. You wouldn't believe it. Without it was polished in nature, not by human hands. So, all living beings, please, next slide. Yeah. All living beings in flora and fauna start from a primitive version to a very complex one. It's an uphill process. The captivating phrase is from molecule to man. The upper one is normally what you know, and the lower one is a cartoon. When was this? I was it in 1917, and then 2017 in Austria, the last figure won the European Song Contest. Yeah. So, turn around, something went wrong. So, and also, I remember the magazine, the cartoon magazine, Mad. We read it in high school. Please, next one. And this is their version of the Big Bang. The madman was afraid of the Big Bang, yeah? When Fidel Castro smoked his cigar. Now we come to a critical point. In nature, we see order and disorder. Order stands for complexity, disorder for loss of complexity. What we observe in reality, though, is a downhill development, not an uphill development, as we saw in the molecule to man picture. And observation tells us buildings fall apart. You see the ruins from Romans. Even in Austria, we have Roman ruins. You won't believe it. For the guests here in Austria, take a drive to Carnuntum. It's the capital of the province of Noricum. And it hosted at that time 25,000 people. They have a Roman bath that is fully functioning, the only Roman bath in the world that is fully functioning, but you're not allowed as a public visitor to use it. But it's very interesting. So, also how we disintegrate. When I look at my teeth, there are several ruins in there. And they are filled, yeah? So you don't see them. Yeah, and order, the order is a problem, yeah? It takes different forms with amount of energy and complexity to build objects. And to understand how this works in reality, let's take this, it's called system analysis, this topic. I mean, the science about how order and disorder behaves and how systems behave. And it comes from the time when the steam engine was developed. There's a theory. Thermodynamics was developed. John Watts was the pacemaker at that time. And it states so that everybody says the laws of thermodynamics don't apply, but every system has energy. This room has energy, you have energy, you're a system. Yeah? So all the laws of thermodynamics apply to you as well. So, example, water flows from a reservoir in the mountains down to the valley. Have you ever seen the water flowing uphill by itself? Even the plumbers don't see that. They only know three things. Water flows downhill, it freezes at 0 degrees centigrade, and Friday is payday. That's all you need to know as a plumber. But there's another example. Picture yourself a library. All books are in alphabetical order on the shelves. And I remember in our institute at university, books were misplaced. So I had made a sign, alphabetical order is just a guideline in the library. And so some people misplace books when they return it, some fall down, they put it up sloppily. I remember my first daughter, when she was young, still not able to walk, but she went to the bookshelf and tried to, can I pull it down? Yeah? So the books are on the floor. Let's say when books are all in place, it's order. When all books are on the floor, it's complete disorder. You open the window, you let the storm come in, you bring in energy, because this is what the skeptics say. If you just add energy to the system, you can increase order. But if a storm blows into the library, the books don't move to their place. You need a librarian to put the books back. And in our case, in the world, God was the librarian. He put everything in place where it belonged. Order and complexity are hard to measure. And physicists formed a quantity called entropy. One of the most difficult quantities to understand philosophically. I remember high school, I think it was sixth classes, we were 16, and the teacher of chemistry dropped the word entropy, and maybe like you, entropy, what is that? Guys, he said, you don't know what entropy is? I will try to explain this complicated thing in 2 minutes. So, the higher the entropy, the less order is found in a system. Statistical thermodynamics is, when you look at all the particles as an ensemble, is formulated in the following way. The more elements in the system that can trade places, without changing the overall property of the system, the higher the disorder is. So, all books on the floor, they trade places. Chaos doesn't change, it's still chaos. Yeah? All books on the shelves, you can't trade two books because then the order is changed. Yeah? That means entropy, entropy grows with time. The further on towards infinity, entropy will be chaos. Entropy will reach the value of infinity. But the second law of thermodynamics, in principle, you can move backwards in time. That means if you move backwards in time from the present state, you see that the entropy decreases until it gets to zero, but it has to be always positive. So that's the starting point of time. That's paradise. That's the end of creation week. We have complete order. People don't realize this, but that works. And at that point, end of creation week, there is John Bercow. Have you ever heard of this guy? He's the Speaker of the British Parliament. He retired, I think, in 2019. And his shout order is legendary. Go to YouTube and you find one of his most famous outblasts. Yeah? Order! Coming back to the Big Bang, it all began as condensed elements, and they could trace places without changing the overall system. When you have just atoms or molecules, no stars, nothing, they can move around, trade places. So at the beginning we had chaos and not order. God started with order, evolution starts with disorder. Life Goes On is a song by American singer-songwriter Oliver Tree. He wrote the lyrics and the melody on music paper to preserve it for other musicians to play. In nature, every living systems in flora and fauna, plants or animals need a possibility to reproduce. They need a music sheet, kind of, yeah? A building plan called genetic information is stored in a highly complex manner. We have cells, that's the smallest living units, skin, brain, stomach, everything. They're different cells, yeah, in our whole body. They have a membrane, that's the shell around the cell. They have a mitochondrium, that's the power plant. You need a stove so they can cook, yeah, keep things going. You have a cell plasma where other molecules are floating around, and you have the nucleus. This is where the genetic information resides. And you see there a picture of a cell that is cut open. It's small. And the mitochondrium is very important for anthropology because the genetic information along the mankind is passed on through female mitochondria. Yeah? I don't know why, but I will study that. And you have highly complex, that's next slide, please. Highly complex molecules. There's the DNA. Everybody knows this abbreviation is the deoxyribonucleic acid. And it's huge. It's like a ladder that you twist. It's called a double helix. Two strands, sugars and phosphate units put together, alternating, and in between those units, the second strand are bases. 4 bases, cytosine, guanine, and adenine and thymine. And it can duplicate itself when cells divide. This started already. There's the history at the bottom. In 51, Francis Crick and Watson, Raymond Gosling, Maurice Wilkins, and Rosalind Franklin finalized the understanding of this molecule. And I read at that time, was very curious in science. I read already a popular science magazine, and I told my biology teacher that I'm interested in that. Oh, he said, let's do a Vorführstunde, a demonstration lesson. And he said, well, what is that? Well, someone from the teacher council is coming and see what we are doing and how this go up. So everything was set, and I walked into that room. Our class was 29, and there were about 30 teachers sitting there. I wasn't too used to big audiences. I mean, I was used to talk to colleagues, yeah, to fellow students, but that was okay. So, but to give an interesting idea, you think you need huge storage capacity. Look at each one of you. Everybody's different. And the features of the face, the hair color, the teeth and the toenails and whatever has to be coded. So many features. So it's, yeah, there are 400 And physicists think in exponents. They don't think in 20, 30 or something. They say 1,000, 10,000, a million, and so on. And according to the number of zeros behind the one, they have prefixes. And exa is the prefix for the exponent 18. To give it, this is beyond R. This is a 1 with 18 zeros. This doesn't tell you anything, or me either, because I have to picture it in real life. When you send an email to your friends and you attach images, photos, does anybody know how much you can send? 20 megabyte is the limit in Windows. 20 megabyte. So if you translate this into emails, fully loaded, you have 20 million emails. Start now to use everything. And this is just in 1 gram of DNA. In the brain, there are many more grams. So it's incredible what the human brain can store, because it's just so compacted. It's incredible. Then you have the storage. You have to put it into practice, so that the living being operates. There's a ribonucleic acid. This is the messenger that goes into the cell plasma and starts to compose proteins. And the proteins are, this protein drink, The bodybuilders, they need protein drinks. And the protein is a series of amino acids. This is the smallest building block of human, or in biology, let's put it this way. And we need these amino acids as enzymes, because they catalyze every reaction in such a way, by a factor of 10 to the 17th. That means if you have a chemical reaction without the protein, it takes very long. But you can speed up with the protein present, with a catalyst, from 78 million years without enzyme to 18 milliseconds. Can you imagine the boom when it's done? Yeah? I once, when I started in Sunday school talking about this, I said, if you just put everything together from scratch, there's first, all the atoms, they should arrange themselves into DNA. You don't have to, and you get a plethora of possibilities of combinations. You don't have enough time, because the reaction can't be that fast, so that you can get the DNA and then sort out all the junk and stay then with the product that you need. And you don't have the mass, so that you can realize all the possibilities. So just this, by chance, it is impossible. But you see, here's a very nice picture. The 2 strands on the side, P is the phosphor unit, S is the sugar, T and A and G and C are the bases. And 3 of those bases are a codon, and the codons together get the information of what to build. I once talked to a situation. I said, well, you have to read this book from Dennis Alexander. He's a neo-Darwinist. That means everything with when you go to the cell level and the genes, you can have the units and they can change, and now comes up a new being. Yeah? Book of more than 300 pages. But about on page 320, he admitted, well, the whole thing in principle works, but we don't know how the DNA came into being. Well, problems. Please, next one. You don't want to know problems. Yeah? We don't know if we want to understand how everything evolved by chance. and want to do the experiment. We don't know the primeval parameters, pressure, temperature, concentration of the ingredients. You need hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. And if you let them react, you get the right and left-handed molecules. That's called dexterity. It's like the hands, you know? This hand cannot be put on the other hand. No, it's different. You can turn and twist it like this is the left hand, this is the right hand. It's stereochemistry because those two molecules, that left-handed and right-handed, they have the same number of atoms and the same kind of atoms, but they have different positions in space. Yeah? And that's the problem. And only one version, the L version, the left version, is used in amino acid. So tell me, if everything works by chance, who is sorting out the right-handed molecules and just uses the left-handed? It's unthinkable. And there are side products that are poisonous to the amino acids. So you have the result as an amino acid, but there's another molecule that destroys it. So they are unstable. And in this primal atmosphere, when they did the experiment, oxygen was excluded because it forms ozone, and ozone falls into O2 and plus O single, and O single is aggressive. Can't have that. But we need for breathing oxygen. First you exclude oxygen and then you need it? How does that work, the transition? I don't know. And the amino acids are unstable. They need, from these aggressive, poisonous molecules, they need a protection, the cell wall. There are also proteins that protect them. And, and if you consider, you have the earth, you have the primeval soup, you need all the ingredients, yeah? And for getting up the ladder from the amino acids to the proteins, to the RNA, to the DNA, you need all the constituents at the same time, at the same moment, in the right concentration, so everything would function. Unthinkable, unreasonable. But, yeah, and the catalysts are essential. The problem is the proteins function as catalysts, but how to build the proteins is stored in the DNA. So this is a chicken and egg problem. You first have to, you need the molecule that you want to build. For that to build, you need the enzyme, but to know how the enzyme is built and works is in the DNA. So, yeah, chicken and egg problem. It's if you talk about the creation day and so on. God created a mature creation. He created both the chicken and the egg at the same time. Yeah, that's the solution. And the summary. Life is complex, even in the smallest units. The genetic material has incredible storage capacity, as I told you. Additionally, you need information imprinted on the DNA. Once you have built the DNA, you need to build a cell with a nucleus, cell membrane, the mitochondria, power plant, and so on. We as Christians know where the information that is imprinted or stored in the DNA comes from. God put it there. Without information, there is no life. On the other hand, theologians with the Bible tell us there is life in Jesus. In Jesus' statements start with I am, we find, next slide please. I am the bread of life. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And you know, from Old Testament, the expression I am is a synonym of God. So God is the bread of life. God is the resurrection and the life. God is the way, the truth, and life. And we have a promise. Next slide, please. As I say, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. This was Jesus' goal. So we are called to pass that on. Tell people, You can have life abundantly. Just believe. Just believe. A small step. Doesn't cost anything. But there's a warning. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. You may encounter people who don't understand, who don't want to believe it. Yeah? They don't want to see it. Be aware of that. But we have the affirmation in Ephesians 5:8. For you were formerly darkness, but now you are light in the Lord, and walk as children of light. Let us rejoice in him who know him, and we have life, and let us spread the good news. Thank you for listening.